Many people have problems with art and not with reality.
So why is art different?
It's pretty simple, right?
This is knowledge, this is thinking, this is thought.
Yeah, it does something strange with your head.
Welcome to the Undergang Armchair.
Bring it.
Welcome to the Undergang Armchair. My name is Ando. Man, I gotta say, even if it was only 2 weeks ago that I hopped on here, it feels like a lifetime ago. This show is not inherently political, but I do not mind saying, holy shit, what the fuck is going on? We all knew he was going to be president, but it still feels pretty weird. So I will not pontificate. This is not the platform for that. But in case you were in doubt about what I think, then I will say this. I am fucking terrified. But good on all the people protesting around the world. We're going to need a lot more of that. And my hope is that something positive can come out of all this evil. And speaking of positive, now is a great time to release this really fantastic conversation I had with Jacob Kirkegaard. This was last year. So we don't talk about current events, but it also does not matter because we're here to talk about his practice and his thoughts on a wide range of subjects. I found him to be refreshing and open, and I truly hope to keep a conversation going with him in one way or another. He has a lot on his plate. I don't think I know any artist personally who has more shows and projects coming up like he does. So if you are interested in him, check out his site. He is appearing all over the world. But there's too much to say about him. He has made tons of work. He's prolific. He's amazing. And I'll get the hell out of the way now and let the man speak for himself. So get ready for a good one, friends.
We don't learn from history. We don't even look back and see, okay, why do people fight? Like, why did the thing happen in Rwanda? Like, look at the history. Look at what happened. What the Belgians did to the Tutsis and the Hutus, how they made the different hierarchy and
right, divide and conquer.
Yeah.
It's brutal. And one of the things I've gotten really tired of in the art world is the word post-colonialism.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because it still fucking exists.
But that's the thing. You can't deny the fact that it is so pervasive in the world, all over the world.
Yeah, totally.
And we live in a arguably not even post-colonial world,
Yeah.
And the problem is, like, how do you fix that? Because you can't take it back.
No.
You can't take back dividing India and Pakistan.
No.
What are we going to do? Just dissolve the border and be like, go for it.
Yeah.
And that's even ethnocentric of me to say we.
Mm-hmm.
Why is there a we? Like, why do I have anything to say about this at all?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good idea because there is a lot of talk about how art can be exploitative in that way too, to come back and say, oh, I'm in a position of being an educated cultured person. I'm going to come back here and disseminate, dissect your society in this situation and come back with a fiend cultural object.
Exactly. And at the same time, we as white men are not even allowed to talk about it. Because we are white.
Right.
Are you allowed to talk about how it must be to be gay if you're not gay, or Jew without being Jewish?
Right.
Or speak for women's rights if you're not you can go on. But I think all this is one big misunderstanding, and this is what we're going to try to start that discussion with our work.
I mean, no, we're not allowed to talk about anything as being the most privileged group of people in the Western world.
Exactly.
heterosexual white males of
Yeah.
middle to upper class backgrounds.
Exactly. We are the worst.
We're just going to stop the program now.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to say anything here. No, but I mean, what we can't fix that, or we have nothing that we can do with that right now. I hope I hope a project can eventually discuss that, because it's an idea worth looking into. But one thing I find interesting is for you, the impetus to go out. You have gone out a lot of places to capture something.
Also to Palestine.
Yeah. But you've been to Greenland, you've been
Yeah.
to Ukraine, you've been to Palestine, you've been, tons of places. You've been to the inner ear. You've been, you've done a lot of stuff, and it seems like you're constantly going out to find things.
Also go into the ear. Yeah.
Out and in, yeah. But I mean, that's one thing that popped into my mind while you were saying that you were going to do a project elsewhere, was what it is about going elsewhere, or what it is about trying to go and capture something that attracts you.
Well, there's more to life, than what you immediately see or hear. I mean, many people live their lives, and I understand that tendency to sort of decide, okay, this is my world, this is reality, this is black, this is white, this is good, this is bad. And
this is Trump, this is not
up
Trump.
and down. Yeah. And this is how I have my coffee every day, and and this is what keeps me going, and this is the framing of my life.
Yeah.
And I think in general I'm interested in I'm curious, and I'm convinced that there is always something more to things. And it's like when you meet a person, you talk to that person, but there is something behind the surface as well. And sound is what has really always intrigued something in me, or like interested me. I think that sound has somehow, I guess, been able to create an access to an inner world, or a way for me to feel, like many people photograph, like, which is I also do myself, but I've always liked to record and put things on tape. Sound is fleeting, and
there's something childish about it, and I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I also, as soon as I found out about recording devices, I made a lot of recordings.
Yeah.
And in a way, I guess, still do.
Yeah.
We're doing it right now. But I think there's something about trying to, it's like those home movies you made when you were a kid, when those first kind of somewhat affordable video cameras came out. You're like, there's just that desire to grab onto something. And I think it happens pretty early.
Yeah. It's like we only have our memory. I think when I was 16, I read George Orwell's 1984, and I remember something like they wanted to, I think he described, as far as I remember, this idea of changing the physical evidence, or like removing it so that you only have your memory. And once you only have your memory, you can change the memory. And then what happened doesn't exist anymore. And of course, we can try to store these fleeting moments in a camera obscura, like make a little hole, and then like, I was just scanning some old photos yesterday of my grandmother and so on, and because I realized when I scan these photographs, because they have been changed colors. They are, some of them are quite orange even.
Are these prints, like old
old prints from the 70s?
Yeah.
I'm born in 75, so some of them are like from 76, 78, whatever, 77. And what? As a photographer, indeed what happens to photos. And so, you can just scan them, high resolution, and you can even just go to Photoshop and say like automatic color correction, and then boom, it's just like the kind of natural colors come back.
Took 40 years off of those.
Yeah, and you see things, or I see things that I didn't see before. Not only because I can really zoom into the picture, I can zoom, like I have a picture of my grandmother sitting out in front of the veranda, and the house is just behind her, and there are windows, and you can like zoom in on the screen, like into the living room, in the sort of semi-dark living room where nobody is because she's out there, she is in the focus, but there is this darkened space that I can zoom around in that space, which I never did before when the picture was just in my album among other pictures.
Right.
And then when the colors change, it's like when you can compare it to the old black and white photos that you've always seen, like black and white photos from the past. The past is black and white. But once you put colors on them, like really great, that has been done in the later years, these pictures like of old China, whatever, like the emperor or whatever, all of a sudden seem like something like that happens today.
Right.
Why am I telling all this? It's like,
Well,
a
it's
way
about
to reach
capturing
into something, then you rediscover things from the past. And it's like when you listen to the voice of somebody who have deceased that you've recorded, just like the sense of the smells or whatever, something really comes back. And what I like about sound is that it's not static, like the picture. The picture is static. It's frozen. Mm-hmm. It doesn't live in a way.
Right. And
It does vibrate, but yeah, it's like a moment frozen in time. Whereas if you have a recording of somebody speaking, it goes over time, and you don't see it. It moves other senses.
Mm. Is it like literally a physical reaction for you? That you feel it in your body different than you would, say, a movie with both picture and sound?
I think there is, there is something about when we are dictated to look in a certain direction. Also, when we are in an art museum and we look at a sculpture or a painting, we know it's in front of us. It's not behind us. So we are very safe, but it's also a locked position. Me looking at an image, where sound can be everywhere.
Mm. It is three-dimensional in a way that other things aren't.
Yeah,
that's true.
You can feel it vibrating your body, and at the same time, it can evoke senses. I'm not saying the sound's better, but it just has different qualities that is more abstract. Mm.
But you've always been attracted to this. You didn't start out as a painter or a sculptor or anything.
No, I started recording when I was 6 years old. I got a reel-to-reel tape recorder and started recording, and I still have those tapes where I'm recording. And also from school, I had a little tape recorder. And then I became a musician. I started playing music at 12.
What kind of, guitar, drums?
Guitar, heavy metal, thrash metal.
Yeah. Slayer, Rain and Blood.
Yeah, I saw Slayer live in 1988.
That is what's up. Oh my God, that must have been great.
It was amazing. I was 13 years old, and I went here to Copenhagen. It was a 5.5 hour ride back then with a ferry. And
right. There wasn't even
before
the
bridge.
IC
3 trains. Yeah. And I had some friends who were I was headbanging with, and drinking beers with. I was pretty early with that, and. Then Slayer, my favorite band, came to Copenhagen. It was a South of Heaven tour, which was not their best album, but I had just heard up to Rain and Blood, so
it didn't matter.
No,
anything,
just to see, and that experience was actually. I've realized that this is the first experience in my life where I realized what the power of loud music. Because I had never heard this loud music before. I'd never been at such a huge concert before. And I was 13, so I was very small and very, very slim. Mm. And even at one point, one of my friends who was 17 had me on his shoulders so I could see something. And I just remember when they started out and the sound of
right, just coming out of nowhere.
This was insane. My whole body was like.
Well, I mean, that's it's related, right? Music and then just ideas about sound, which aren't music. They run kind of parallel to each other in that sense.
I became tired of the idea to create to evoke certain sensations in people. Like the manipulation in a way. Let's say now I'm creating a love song. Now
oh, you're gonna cry. I'm gonna make a song that's gonna make you cry.
Thrash metal and then later punk rock have really been very, very important to me. But the energy is a certain kind. It's like goes one way. It's like this, and that is great. I still have some of my records, and I put them on sometimes, and but it's that energy. The energy itself is something that is an interesting energy, and that can I've tried to expand that to myself, to my works, for not being about the hair or being like. In the end, I found, like in the end of the 80s, like many heavy metal bands became too, like there was this vanity about playing fast and long hair and like kind of
the glamour metal, the butt rock
like
years.
Celtic Frost, for example, became like horrible. I don't know how much you know about these bands.
I don't know Celtic Frost, but I know Scorpion and
those more soft,
all those. Yeah. I didn't come to metal till later, unfortunately.
Okay.
Actually, that's not true. I started out with Ministry and Pantera and those ones.
Okay.
And then I found hip hop.
Okay.
And went that route for 10 years. And then I found Slayer and was like, oh, right. This is also good. So I go both
That's
directions.
an interesting way.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Pantera to hip hop to Slayer. Yeah. Wow. So that was Pantera was early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was about where I'm born in 81.
Okay.
So that was about where I was the right age. I was of the Green Day Dookie generation. I was the exact right age when that album came out.
Did you listen to Mudhoney?
I did, but it was a little bit more adult, perhaps, than, like I was...
Nirvana, then.
Yeah, I liked Nirvana, but I didn't understand what Nirvana really was.
I understand, because I was 16 when Nirvana came out, so...
See, I was
then
I was like 10.
Yeah.
9. And he died in 92 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So I was like 11 when he died. And I remember being like, yeah, headbanging, cool, rock music, but I didn't really understand the sea change that Nirvana represented for music in general and culture.
Because before that was Mudhoney and
exactly. Kind of, and so now I appreciate it, but I didn't really then.
I understand.
But then when I was a little bit older, when I was 13, 14, 15, that was Green Day, and then quickly from Green Day into Ministry and Pantera and Megadeth a little bit. And that sort of stuff. But I quickly, I feel like I was just the right age where that was starting to peter out, because the late 90s was very interesting for what was then called underground hip hop. And I started to get that feeling from underground hip hop, because I imagine for you being interested in Slayer in the late 80s felt like you were part of something that was happening.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I could feel like with that hip hop later.
Yeah, okay.
Because also I'm from California, just north of San Francisco. There was a whole local scene there. So you could go, you could find music and then go see it at a club where there's 40 people or something like that.
Yeah.
And sneak in and, get someone to buy you some beer and, all that sort of like youth. And so it becomes part of an experience. It's not just music, but it leads kind of a life,
It's so interesting, because I feel we're sort of, in a way, talking about what we started talking about when we sat down here. It's like this sort of, we as artists, we're so exclusive now. Like we are not part, we are part of an environment, and you can go to Mayhem, or you can go to I think there is an environment where you can go and hear things, but the difference might be that you're not really talking much about what you do, and I don't know.
It's separated out in a weird way.
Somehow, yeah.
When I went to art school, I had to give a presentation, one of my photo classes, about, one of the teachers asked us to give a retrospective in essence. Everybody had a half hour. It was back in the day of slides. They had to photograph everything they'd made up until then, and they had to present where they were. And obviously it was kind of ridiculous because we were all young and had pretty much only made horrible art up until then. But the point was to think about what you do and how you can think about it in kind of a larger context. Well, I did this, and then I got interested in that. And so it was actually very good. And then we also had to photograph things which inspired us to present and stuff. And I decided to play a bunch of hip-hop music during my presentation. And everybody in the room was like, fuck that, don't do that.
What?
Yeah, that's not.
Why?
That has nothing to do with what the art you're showing us. And it's true. Maybe there wasn't any sort of like direct connection, but to me, it went along with that feeling of at the same time I was learning about art and becoming interested in art. It was about the same time that I realized that going to a regular university was not going to be a great idea for me. And so that to me was integrally connected with my life, but to them it wasn't at all. And they were just like, this is distracting. We like Belle and Sebastian. Get this hieroglyphic shit out of here,
man.
So for me, that was an interesting point where, again, it goes back to what you're saying about how it's separated out in the art world, that art isn't necessarily life, even though to me it is.
Horrible, yeah.
And like people will say like, oh my God, you work a lot. And it's like, well, no, because what I'm doing is life. I don't work.
Exactly.
When I go to my job, I go home on time.
My mom is super sweet, but she says sometimes, like again and again, "Oh, Jacob, remember to relax also. You're working all the time. I mean, you must get really stressed by that." And I'm like, look, I get stressed if I don't do my things. This is my drug.
Yeah.
This is what keeps me relaxed.
Yeah. It's true. It makes me super anxious if there's something I want to work on and I can't.
If I don't do anything, I'm like, yeah.
So it is connected, and that is something that maybe the arts education especially could get something out of. I've heard Olafur Eliasson is part of a school in Berlin. He teaches, at least at some institute. A previous guest of the show told me about it, which is very much about like, today we're going to watch old kung fu movies. It's not necessarily, okay, get ready. Now we're going to go through Sol LeWitt's career. Like they really do try to integrate life into some sort of artistic practice, because an artistic practice is a life practice in a way.
To me, it's it totally makes sense. And it's something that I have, since the last 20 years for sure, been completely convinced about, that learning something, you don't have to actually sit down and do exactly that. Can do something else. I mean, the first time I heard about this idea was there was this Buto, Buto, like Japanese Buto, Butoh.
I have heard of it, but I'm trying to place it what it is. Is it the one with the masks?
No, I think that's No.
Yeah.
So the follower that was sprung out of No, I believe, was then Buto, which is they're painted white.
And they have crazy facial expressions?
Yeah, and often naked. And they're like...
Right, they make those crazy...
And very slow movements and so on. I did some 2 weeks of a No training many years ago. And that was just walking very, very, very slowly from one end of the hall to the other, and then back again, backwards. But walking slow. And after doing that for 5 days or something, I had realized that I was walking 10 times slower than I ever thought I could have walked. So I walked 2 weeks like this. And, you just like move your one foot up and then just like this. And then put it down and then next one. And like really, 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 really slow.
That's a wild physical experience.
Yeah. You could use 20 minutes taking one step.
Wow.
Like this. And that kind of thing you go into could be a way to learn other things,
right?
So it makes sense to me, So,
well, it's funny what deliberate practice can do. Whether it's, as simple as sitting and clearing your mind, what that can do physically and kind of emotionally for somebody. But it connects back. I wanted to tell you about how I found about your work, because I actually had a very physical reaction to your work, and that's what that's why I contacted you. I heard an interview with you on an American podcast. I believe it was 99% Invisible. I listened to so many podcasts that they all blend together. It may have been that. It may have been Radio Lab.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure. I've actually heard you twice on American podcasts.
Yeah. Okay.
But you were presenting and talking about the work from Ukraine, from Chernobyl. And here I am. I'm listening to podcasts. I've got my headphones on. I'm at work, but I've got them turned up loud enough and with, up that I'm in the auditory world. I'm doing something rote and normal with my hands. I'm not really paying attention. I'm just kind of absorbing. And there you are, and you're talking about the process of going to Chernobyl and exploring these rooms, these spaces, and the recordings. And then I think you talked for a couple minutes. It felt like a long time, but then eventually they started actually playing the recordings. And I remember just looking down my arm and seeing goosebumps go all the way down my arm.
Amazing.
And they go like, wow, and as a person who's been to art school and made awful sound art, because we had to make everything, there was kind of a ground education where you had to try everything. I realized how hard it is, at least for me, how hard it was and how hard for the other students I was with to get to that point. Like, you want to do that. You want to make some sort of auditory experience, which is, like you say, it flows in and out of space. It doesn't have a direction. But that your piece did it. And that's when I was like, who's this guy? He's got a Danish name. It sounds like it could be a Danish accent, and sure enough, here you are. But that was a very, very physical reaction, and it came from outside the art world that I learned about this. It was a radio program, and I was at my job.
Well, thanks for sharing this with me. I'm so happy when my work can evoke those kind of physical things, or like where you hear a sound through your ears, but it evokes something somewhere else in your body. I mean, if I should comment on it and think about like how my that work was created. It was what is strong about it for me is that it's the sound is just created from this process of recording the room and playing back these sounds into the room while recording that again, the Alvin Lucia kind of thing, but without being present in the room. I'm not putting any voice in there, but thinking about the sort of voice of the space in a way. That sound is in a way otherworldly, or it is refrained from any will, if you may. Like, I'm not trying to put any specific minor or major chords in there to make it sound dark or like Satan or whatever. It's just like deciding on a method to record or to evoke sound, and then deciding on a space and time and position of a microphone, and then just see what occurs from this interaction with the space. And that is, to me, an important way to work, to see myself more as partly as a curator of sound spaces or whatever. Say, I want to work with you, space. I want to interact here. I'm not going to come here like a colonizer and put my own Danish sound here.
This one's about capitalism.
I'm going to come here and work with you,
Right.
and listen to you, what
Right.
you have to say.
Right.
And then I'm going to give that back to you. I'm going to mirror that. And then you're going to sound something again, and then something grows out of this conversation in a way between me and the space. And that is a sound that is just a product of this. You know what I mean? So it's. And then I've tried to make interpretations of these recordings for musical instruments, and then have instruments play these sounds. Because instruments have such a, I'm originally a musician or a trained musician. Like the sound of a cello is so tied up on whatever it has played through history. So when you hear a cello, you almost hear Johann Sebastian Bach, right? Or like, and everybody's like, I love the sound of a cello.
Yeah, I need a cigar and a cognac
exactly,
right now.
I mean, I've played cello myself, so but it's could I get the cello to play the sound of that room? That was from an sort of an interest for me in both being able to work with instruments again, because I became so tired of all the sort of embedded feelings that many composers put into sound or their compositions, or to sort of have the instruments aside from all the emotions and just listen to have them play something that isn't meant to be anything. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
So
I do. And it makes me think that musicians also have a lot of embedded feelings about how instruments should be played as well. And you must be fighting that as well.
It was. I remember the trombonist who had to play one of these pieces. He's an excellent trombonist. He can play very fast and a lot of things. In the beginning, he was like, well, it's very hard just to play this one tone. I mean, can't we, but then in the end, he was like, I love playing this, So it's like, why should I only play and not unfold myself into this? And, or to create short pieces. I wanted to create a short piece, but I got to know from the boss of that ensemble that, it's, we cannot gather the ensemble just to do a short piece.
What's short? 5 minutes?
Maybe 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But I thought, if you cannot express, if you need always like half an hour to express yourself, where are we then? Anyway, this reaches far out in all kinds of corners, but I think what gives me the goosebumps of these sounds, and also hearing them played by instruments, is that I feel that they have no relevance to me, or they have not relevance, they have no, they are from somewhere else, from another world. It's something that I've never heard before, because there is no, nothing I can say, that's that chord, or that's that feeling that this composer has tried to put into it. It's just a state of mind, or ghostly sound in a way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes you think also about the performance of creating it. And it seems like often your way of interacting with something which interests you is to perform a sort of recording dance, or like some sort of way of interacting with your source material. So in that case, it was recording, playing, re-recording.
Yeah.
And the national, and it speaks also to the machines, the hardware you were using, and the kind of decay that happens inside of that re-recording. I saw a very interesting project, for example, where a guy posted the same picture on Instagram and then downloaded it and reposted it, 600 times. And the way it decays is really crazy.
Yeah.
And it ends up not at all looking like the original photo.
Wow.
And that seems kind of similar to what you're doing, is that you're using material both found material and then methods of capturing the material to create a performative aspect which lends some sort of meaning to it. And that, I mean, there's the same in Greenland, right? You actually went out there, you hiked up onto glaciers, you did these recordings.
Yeah.
And I assume they weren't just a microphone held down, you know. You must have had some sort of control or some sort of...
In Greenland, it was, in a way, just trying to listen to places that you cannot access. These cracks are like very dangerous, you know. You don't want to fall into those cracks. But nevertheless, if you can manage to look into them, you will see that far down there is maybe water. And I slipped down my hydrophone into this water down there and could hear the glacier moving slowly, you know. So that was a way to sort of listen to that glacier or to the world or to global warming, if you will.
Or just the movement of powerful forces.
Yeah. Anything you want. I'm not here to tell anybody this is the sound of global warming, but it seems that my work can fit into many contexts of that kind, but that's up to them, you know, curators and people. But to me, it's a way just to listen and to understand myself and understand the world, because that is a word that I like, is to grasp the world. You know, because we try to understand the world, but to grasp the world can lead, I believe, to a deeper understanding. That means global warming, for example, you'll see like graphs of, like visual graphs of how the ice have declined, or you will see pictures of a glacier and then from 1948 until now, and then it's gone. But will you really grasp what's happening? by just seeing this. You'll maybe understand it, but will you really
feel it?
Feel it. And if you listen to my sounds, you will grasp it. Ding dong.
Well, I mean, I think in a way that's right, because I imagine no one else has figured out to drop a microphone down into a crevice and record the sound.
I don't know. Maybe some people have done it, and I know that Chris Watson does a lot of recordings, and he's been to the North or South Pole, and there are many people who go out there and record. Mm-hmm. So again, what we talked about sort of doing your own thing, or being afraid somebody's going to steal your ideas or steal other ideas, or we're all doing our things, but in our way, right. And my approach is my approach, and my equipment is my equipment, and my ears and my reason for selecting what I do and the context is different from, say, Chris Watson, who is a sublime recordist, and I read it in the Wire interview once. He said, "I'm just a recordist. That's what I want to be called." So he's a recordist, and that's also a way to look at things. I just record, and I try to do it well. And really try to make very, very nice recording of this.
You said something just now which I found very interesting. You said it was a way of finding out about yourself. Do you have an example of that?
Yeah. Palestine, for example. That was, some things I get really frustrated about in this world, which we all do. And I think one of those things is the Israeli occupation of Palestine, or the British mandate, if you want, like all that has helped all this to happen, and what is still even Egypt and Jordan and whatever, it's like the Palestinians are just like trapped, and having been there and having friends there and who are wonderful artists, journalists, normal people, curious, wonderful people, and just I have always been very opposed to racism, and I believe that there is a lot of racism going on there and against the Palestinian people. So then I lived in Berlin for many years and realized how proud they were that this wall is not there anymore, the Berlin Wall. And I witnessed the celebrations of the anniversary of the fall of the wall, and we're living in the free world. Meanwhile, another wall is being built by Israel, and nobody's doing anything against it. Some lifted fingers here and there. Oh, it's illegal, but nobody does anything. They just do it as they want, and that I find very problematic. But I don't know what to do about it. How to get rid of my frustration, because I would never go out and do something illegal. It's not my thing. I want to be with my family, and I want to be, and I'm not immediately threatened either. Right. I live in what they call free society. It's totally Big Brother, but Facebook and everything. But
the walls aren't as visible.
Exactly. But I can pretend that I feel quite free. Definitely, to do my art and to have a son and wonderful girlfriend and friends, and to sit here and talk about these things without, well, who knows after I've said this. But
we'll do a new recording from jail.
Great. 20 years. What I wanted to get at is what can I do? And I think art can heal, and that's what I love about Alejandro Jodorowsky. And I read his book, Dance of Reality. And there he discovers that art can heal him doing art, because he's not in it for the money or for the fame or for saving the world, which I totally agree with. I don't care about fame, money, and to save the world. Everybody wants to save the world. But I just want to work with the healing. And I think I wanted to go and record this wall that they're building, to listen to it. This act of recording it was to me a way to sort of interact with it instead of just sit here and being frustrated about it. Or I cannot go down there and do something, So I go down and do what I'm good at, recording. I wanted to listen to its vibrations. But what I realized when I was there, that the wall didn't vibrate. It didn't have much sound. So at first I was like, shit. But then immediately I realized, of course, it's not resonating. Right. Because it's not meant to.
Right.
It's not meant to resonate with its surroundings. It's meant to be stubborn and just like a stupid wall. It's meant to be what it is. So that taught me a lot about myself and about recording. That you can record everything. You can do the act of recording, but sometimes you don't get anything back. But then you learn by doing it. But you have actually touched it. You have tried to get to the other side from where you are and found a completely different world there, no matter if you come from one area or the other area. Yeah, this was a long story, but
it's a good one. It's a really good one. And I see the inquisitive nature in everything you do. You are just trying to find out what is out there. And you happen to resonate with the idea of sound. And, you don't know what you're going to find beforehand. It seems like most of your projects, you don't know what the result's going to be. You go out to find what that is.
Exactly. That is a very important part of it. Of course, I do all the research I can before I go somewhere, in order not to be just naive. I need to know, before I went to Chernobyl, I needed to find out what's the risk of radiation, whatever. I need to know before I climb the glacier, how dangerous it is. Who am I with? Who takes me there? How can I move about in these areas near this apartheid wall in Palestine without being shot? Standing there with my cables and putting things on the wall. This maybe not be a good idea. Such things, you need to know. Still, but about the sound.
Right, the actual.
That is something very important for me, not to be too sort of closed mind about what I want to find. Because that's the fun, because when things start to speak to you. Because, we have the ones who are blessed in our relationships, who have a good time with our partners, if we have one, I believe are the ones who are able to be flexible to the other and to try to understand the other person, not just to talk all the time, because then that other one shuts up. And that is what I want to, what I feel when I am out in a space. I want to get to know this space. I want to know what this space is about. I want to know its history. Gather all the information I can in order to, I could say in an egoistic way, get the most out of it, the best out of it. Because at the end of the day, we want to have a good time, and I want to have a good time with my partner. So how can I get a good time with my partner? By understanding her, what she's about, why she talks, from where she talks, why she says, etc. So if I go out to Chernobyl with a fixed idea that this place is just a horror and there are wolves with two heads and
post-Cold War nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And is this the screams of the radiation of the victims? And I have to be open, and see what the place tells me. I'm not trying to sound esoteric or something, but it's really just a sort of the more you know about something, I believe the more you can get out of it. It's like, you know your enemy as well. When countries occupy other countries, try to throw out bad guys, You know, do you know why they are so-called bad guys? What led them to it? And what will they stop? How? Talk.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me, this idea, you know, the way you go about it. But the practical part of my mind immediately turns the corner to a reality for me, which is the process of editing and presenting material after you touch it.
Okay, good luck.
For me, we're almost done here. For me, it like I can photograph. I go to a place, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can photograph 1,000 rolls of film, let's just say. And then you're there with this enormous material and you've decided that you're going to turn it into something. Mm-hmm. How is that for you? How do you then turn the corner after you've captured it? Because I know that you also make a lot of installations and kind of like, or not installations, but you try to make some sort of physical, I guess installation is the right word. You know, some sort of presentation
Sure.
of this material, which has a little bit more of a physical experience rather than just hearing. What is that like when you turn that corner from gathering to presenting?
It already happens when I research. And then it happens when I'm out there on the field. What I try to do is to record as much as possible, as long durations as possible, but as little different stuff as possible. You know what I mean? It's like if I went to Greenland, the Greenlandic director, artist Inuk Silishø invited me there for a project called Greenland that he's working on, that I will do the sound for. We're also going to record next year. And, you know, I try to understand what he wants to do and what it's about and what the environment will be, what sounds I will possibly find. And then when I'm there, I see, okay, try to get the idea, what I will find and so on. And then record that. Because you can go on recording when you see a place, when you are somewhere, oh, there is this, and I can also record this, and I can also record this.
This is the problem I have.
Yeah, and that's what I try not to do that, because then, you know, I have too many things that go in all kinds of directions. Then I rather want to spend half an hour recording one thing that sounds great. You know, and you can always run around, you know. There will also always be a new girl, you know, or a new whatever, you know. It's like, you know, once you sort of find out, okay, there is actually something to find here, you know. Of course, you need to find something that you really like, whether that's girl or it's a sound or food, you know. But if you find something that is great, why not stay there and then sort of understand it, record. I mean, I found this crack on the glacier. It just sounded great. And I just had to stay there and record. But the temptation was also to run around like crazy.
What's that over there?
Yeah, which I also did. But I realized that the first sound I did was the best. I could have done more recordings of that. But I luckily also have learned something, so I did record a lot there. So, you know what I mean? It's really, you know, I try to narrow down in that sense of the concept or the idea that I'm after all here to record melting ice or something,
and not Greenland,
not
in general.
Yeah. Yes, that can be another trip.
That's a really good. That's a really, really good way to look at it, because I struggle personally a lot with editing material down, because I have the tendency to be like, well, I'll just do this other thing too because it's here, and maybe I'll use it, and maybe I won't use it. But the point is that even if it exists, it might confuse me as to what it is. Yeah, I may want to do.
Well, first of all, I try to find out why am I here in the first place. You know, sometimes when I go out record, when I was in Palestine to record, I was there to also visit a friend who has a house in the West Bank. And he showed me around, and we were in Nablus and at the university, and I met the students there. And I also did some recordings in his village. So it was not that I didn't do any recordings, but only on the wall. But I tried to be a little bit autistic when I record and say, this is just for something else, or this is for something that is not for that.
This is for the archive.
This is for the archive. I try to make sure, like, clear to myself before I record. It's okay now, I just go out and record, and I don't know now what I'm going to be using it for. I just want to record the space and have it as in the archive. And then one day maybe, you will use it. For sure you will. But then I go recording one day along the wall, and I gather all these recordings. And in my computer, I gather this in one folder. I don't mix them.
They're separate.
Yeah.
Smart.
I'm wondering now how you're going to mix our interview.
I do very little editing.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I'll cut out the parts that need to be cut out about the project we can't talk about, etc. But I forgot to turn off my phone. Hold on a second. I try to leave it as much as a conversation straight through.
Okay.
As much as possible.
Yeah, I hope it's interesting enough to listen to.
It's interesting enough for me. That's good enough for me.
Great.
I do have one final question, or like the last thing I want to talk about is the actual act of presenting it in the arts context, in a museum, in a gallery. Yeah. What that does to you and to the work. You know, because you've also released music, you've released CDs, you've done all this stuff, but there's a specific kind of arts context. Yeah, also.
That was also, I wanted to answer this because it was in your previous question also. Yeah, so that is also something that happens when I'm actually out there recording most of the times, I guess. It is that I already start then to think about what is the frame, like how can this be presented. Of course, if I'm invited by a filmmaker, I know that my sounds are going to be in a film. So that's nice to know. So that means, okay, it sets some limits that I can work within. Whereas when I went to Chernobyl many years ago now, I did bring a video camera, which then opened up to their thought, okay, maybe I'm going to do a video work as well, which will maybe be then an installation or a concert with a video projection. Simple. How do I present my ear sound pieces? My first piece, Labyrinthitis, that was based on the sounds emitted by our cochlears. Could I do an installation? How would that installation look like? Maybe I could do something that resembles the cochlea, which is a spiral. That's where the sounds are emitted from within the ears. Could I create a kind of a giant cochlea and then with loudspeakers and then present the sounds through there? You know, it has to make sense to me. It shouldn't just be like, oh, because I thought it looks cool or something. I want to know, I want to be able to answer to myself, why am I doing what I'm doing? You know, it's like, not just because it looks great. However, now I have tried to quit all my concepts and ideas. You know, I played a concert at Mayhem not long ago, and I decided to say, okay, now I'm going to present a concert that is just, what can you call it, devoid from all the concept texts. I just dove into my hard disks and just like didn't think about if it was this project or that or those raw sounds I'd never used for anything or that project. I just took sounds that I thought sounded great together, and then I did this mix of my sounds that was just like sound, because however it's, you know, at the end of the day I'm working with sound, so it is important that it's really also you know, sound that works in itself also.
Was it rhythmic?
Kind of, with a pulse for sure.
Well, I mean, I could literally go on forever, but I've already stolen so much of your time.
No worries. It's been very, very nice.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's been a pleasure.
For me too. I hope we speak more soon.
Oh, we will. We might have to make a group here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Undergang Armchair. Intro and outro music was kindly provided by Johnny Ripper, and today's interstitial music was provided by Twin Music Com. You can find links to their music and tons of other conversations with great people on our glacier of a website, undergang.net. If you do like this show, we would appreciate it if you take the time to leave a review on iTunes so others can find us, or just tell a friend. This show is produced in part with the kind support of the Danish Arts Council. Thank you for joining us.